Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily with Kyle Elfrink and Ray Flowers, Monday through Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Don't forget to use the promo code FSD20 for a 20% discount on the products over at Fantasygurucom.
As long as everybody else is wrong, then it's sometimes fun to be wrong as well. We welcome you into Fantasy Sports Daily. Kyle Elfrink here. Ray Flowers over there. Ray, me, everybody. Kind of wrong about Monday Night Football. You had a 2-touchdown underdog win on the road. You had a 6-point underdog win against Green Bay. You had 2 non-playoff teams defeat playoff teams. You had a combined over-under of 81.5, and we got over 100 points scored in the 2 games. And Ray, I don't think anybody was picking Tennessee, and very, very, very few people were picking the New York Giants last night. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good, Kyle. Glad to be here with you and the listeners and the viewers. And that was, as you titled, a Monday Night Surprise. Or surprises. You could have created a scenario where the Giants won. It would have been tough to do it, but you could have created it. The other game, oh boy, and especially with the way the game played out too. So a couple of games kept things interesting and exciting on Monday Night Football.
Yep, we will, of course, tackle all things Monday Night Football, including the dramatic, I think it's fair to say, comeback by the Tennessee Titans. Tyreek Hill's limping around too, so all things are not pleasant right now in Miami as they come off that loss. And, of course, we will talk about Tommy DeVito, he who is unstoppable at this point. 3 straight wins for Tommy DeVito, and I guess the Giants are kind of in the playoff race. That's what they're saying. I don't truly buy it, but I guess they're not eliminated, so they're in the playoff race. But we'll talk Monday Night Football. News and notes. What's the latest on Justin Herbert? What's the latest on Justin Jefferson? We will talk about both Justins coming up in the show. Week 15 waiver wire. It's kind of a big one. People are in the playoffs. People may have lost Justin Herbert. People may have lost C.J. Stroud. Who are the quarterback options to turn to in the first week of the postseason? We will discuss that. We'll hit you with some other news and notes. And then we will finally get around to Shohei Ohtani. We were unable to do this yesterday with the full recap of all of Sunday's action. And Ray, it's actually good we waited on Ohtani because we got some pretty outlandish and wild news yesterday about his contract, where I guess in effect, Ray, Shohei Ohtani is getting paid $2 million a season. I wonder, Ray, when you do that sort of deal and all the money's deferred, what's it come out to? Like $680 million deferred, something like that?
Yep.
Doesn't it indicate that this was really not a free agent market for Shohei Ohtani? It just indicates he was going to LA come hell or high water and was willing to give them an absolute deal to get the deal done, I guess.
Yeah, and we'll get into it later, right? You don't want to fully get into it now, I assume?
No, just quick take.
Yeah,
this was never it. And I was Dodgers all the way, but this proves that he was Dodgers all the way.
Yeah, I will say this. He was Dodgers all the way. I give him full thumbs up and credit because he made this happen, right? He made this happen. We'll talk about it later. I think this is detrimental, if not outright scandalous for Major League Baseball. We'll get into it and all that, but kudos to Ohtani. He ended up where he wanted to be, and he signed the most team-friendly contract maybe in sports history
ever
to make it happen.
Ever. Absolutely ever. And it's kind of like putting something you really want on the credit card, but the difference is when you put it on a credit card, you pay interest. The Dodgers aren't even paying interest on this money. They don't have to pay it for like 10, 11 years. No interest. Boy, that's a hell of a deal there. Also, I'm the only one saying this, but I will say this. The Royals are now your World Series favorite. I'll tell you why coming up later in the show. Ray, deals to be had. It's the Christmas season. Everybody's handing off gifts. And unlike the Dodgers and Shohei Ohtani, these are payments you can probably make in one fell swoop to get all the great stuff we have at Fantasyguru.com.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we're not going to let you defer this. You're going to have to pay this when you do it. But promo code FSD20, as always, that's our promo code here on the show. So any of the products you want to sign up for, DFS, betting, seasonal, any of the sports, FSD20. We have a special on our football product the rest of the way. The football product the rest of the way includes seasonal, it includes DFS, and it includes wagering. It's all three. And I think I've been remiss in not mentioning the wagering part of things here recently, but it's all three: seasonal, wagering, DFS, from now through the Super Bowl. And if you want to get that package, again, everything, that's Discord, all the articles, all the three major ways to play it. Use the promo code HOHO, 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 for the holiday season, pal.
You are allowed, Ray, to forget about the wagering because you are in a state that still doesn't allow it.
Yep.
I am in a state that still doesn't allow it. Texas is a state that still doesn't allow it. So I know it's everywhere, but it's not everywhere. There's a lot of people still uninvolved. But for those who are involved, man, what we provide at fantasyguru.com is absolute top of the ladder kind of stuff. So do sign up and enjoy everything that we offer there on the website. A lot of articles popping today. We are already taking a look ahead to week 15. We've got waiver calls. We've got buy, sell, hold stuff. We've got hockey DFS, NBA DFS. It's all over there at fantasyguru.com. Okay, let's dig into Monday night. Let's start in Miami. I gave the Titans no chance here. Everybody gave the Titans no chance. And honestly, Ray, we were all right with 4 minutes to go in that game last night. And somehow, some way, the Titans, of all teams, scored 2 touchdowns, have a successful 2-point conversion. In their final 2 drives, they cover 139 yards. On the game-winning drive, they cover 64 yards in 26 seconds. These are things not associated at all with the Tennessee Titans.
For 5 years. Yeah.
Yeah, these are just very foreign developments. And I guess, Ray, we got to give credit to Will Levis. When you look at the final line, it's not anything spectacular. And he made rookie mistakes. There were a couple of bad plays. But, man, when the game was on the line, he was making some throws. He was making some plays. And he got a huge road victory in Miami.
Yeah, and he is what you explained, right? There's good, there's bad, there's strong. This, to me, though, it just shows you, and this is kind of building on something we've been talking about for a decade now, you and I, plus, of what we talked about a lot this year, how talent evaluators could look at Will Levis and look at Bryce Young and not see a difference there. Remember, Will Levis fell to the second round.
Yeah.
Like, this is not like Will Levis was the 4th pick. He fell to the second round. So you watch Will Levis play, and he's got the skills to be a successful NFL quarterback. Whether he can tidy things up, whether he can cut the mistakes out, I don't know the answer to that. And we'll have to wait and see how his career develops. But he owns the required skills to be a leader. He also has that gung-ho Baker Mayfield attitude where he's running all over the place and pumping his fists and stuff. Some people love that in quarterbacks. Some people want them to be more like Bryce Young and be very calm. But Will Levis deserves full marks for starting his career great with that first game, hitting some bumps in the road, kind of evening things out here, and leading his team to a dramatic and surprising victory last night over the Dolphins.
And Tennessee, even with Levis, especially in his rookie year, is not going to change their stripes. They're still going to be a pretty boring offense that doesn't ask a quarterback to hit multiple throws down the football field of 30 yards or anything like that. Levis can do that. You mentioned the first game. He just went off and, all those deep touchdown passes to DeAndre Hopkins. But since then, it's been pretty ordinary, for Will Levis until last night. And Ray, it really came down to, okay, pressure's on, let's do it, kid. And the Titans don't play that way, but they had to in that situation, and he answered the bell. I don't know if anything changes with the Titans, Ray.
I don't think so.
And that's the problem with getting too fired up is, there are rumors of Vrabel maybe going back to his alma mater of Ohio State. I don't think that's going to happen. Or, this is a team that's probably going to miss the playoffs. I don't think they're moving on from Vrabel. And I bring all that up, Ray, because I wonder, as long as Vrabel is in there, and as long as you've got Derrick Henry, aren't the Titans going to continue to be a boring offense? Or do you think they could actually say, wow, we've got something with Will Levis, and let's open it up a bit. Let's go out and add another piece to DeAndre Hopkins. They blew it with Treylon Burks. The guy has done nothing. Every receiver they've brought in, Ray, has mostly done nothing. Hopkins has been fine, probably better than I would have guessed, and he was good last night with some big plays. But overall, Ray, they don't seem to have the capacity to find receivers. They just seem to be very at ease with having Derrick Henry take 20 carries a game and winning slugfest 20-13.
Yeah, it's 8:10 in the morning here on the West Coast, and I could have swore you just asked me a question are they going to open their offense up? Maybe I heard you wrong. Like I'm still asleep. They're not opening. No, you know the answer. They're not going to do that. They don't want to throw the ball 38 times. They don't want to have to score 28 points. They don't want to have to open up the offense and just say, kid, make it happen here. They don't want to do any of that. It's nice to know they can do it if they have to. I think the issue for them is everything that you pointed out. The coaching staff, the way they want to run the offense, the skill players they have on offense, the style of football they play, all of that stuff. No, last night was a one-off. And, to be fair, for 50-plus minutes, it was Titans football, right? And then at the end it changed. But I can't envision a scenario where they think, hey, if we play fourth quarter football like that for 4 full quarters, we're going to have a chance to win football games. They're not going to do that.
Derrick Henry was not very efficient, but he got into the end zone twice. That's 3 straight games with multiple touchdowns for Derrick Henry. It was still 2 yards carry for Derrick Henry. So those touchdowns are kind of saving the year for Derrick Henry. Mentioned Hopkins. He looked good. Tajay Spears, very big out of the backfield. 6 catches for 89 yards. So, full credit to Tennessee. They won this game. On the other side, Ray, for Miami, I didn't think they played badly, but it was very evident without Tyreek Hill. They lost a lot of luster in that game. He left very early in the first quarter, came back in the third quarter. He was used in the third and fourth quarter, Ray, but it was not your typical Tyreek Hill. And he tried to play through it. I think he said his wife told him to get back on the field. So he answered her call. It's still disappointing, though. You feel like in a home atmosphere with a chance to still compete for that number 1 seed in the AFC, they just didn't have it. And, Mostert got in the end zone. Achane was used. I was a little disappointed in Waddle, the lack of kind of stepping up without Tyreek Hill. And I know there'll probably be critics of Tua Tagovailoa. You got to win this game, and he didn't make plays and in the sacks that you – I just thought Miami, and it feels like a lot of this was in week 14. It was just like without Tyreek Hill, they just didn't have the answer, I guess, for the Titans defense. And again, they were winning by 14 points with 5 minutes to go. I don't want to say they were bad, but it was still disappointing to have that kind of effort last night.
Yeah, disappointing to lose the game. Disappointing to have your defense be unable to stop a team in the Titans that doesn't do this, as we just laid out. We've done a lot of parallels, or I have at least, to the Niners, which are obvious and basic and kind of dumb, the coaches and the schemes and all that kind of stuff. But you saw the Niners lose Deebo Samuel, and the offense still worked. You saw Tyreek Hill struggle last night, and the offense didn't really work. They got a couple of short field situations for Mostert. And it's not Tua's fault, but this is, and I hate to be a broken record with this, he doesn't elevate the play of his teammates. He doesn't. And there's been a lot of people that have I think, put him in that upper echelon of quarterbacks because the numbers are good. And they see him, they go read a box score, and it's like we've talked about, he's just dropping passes and guys running wide open in the field. This is about scheming, and this is obviously a huge part about Tyreek Hill. And I think, Jalen Waddle had that little hiccup himself at the start of the game, and 6 catches for 79 yards is nice, but you're right. He didn't step up. And I don't know if I'm not blaming him. I'm just saying he didn't step up the way you need someone in this offense to step up if Tyreek Hill is not able to play at 100%.
Well, and all in all, you score 27 points against the Titans, the game should be won.
You should win.
Yeah. So the defense collapsed, and again, Levis made plays late. So it was kind of a very weird evening with the Titans able to score that way. Again, they're just not built in that direction. The Hill and kind of the lack of offense, it reminds me, Ray, and it's perturbing to me individually. I don't know, probably to Ray too, but I was catching some national radio broadcasts yesterday before this game, and it was Tua for MVP. He's the latest guy, and Lamar Jackson for MVP, and Brock Purdy for MVP, and we've gone through Jalen Hurts for MVP, and Dak Prescott. Like every quarterback, Ray, whoever had the good week, he's now the guy.
Right. Who's CJ Stroud, don't forget him.
And what's so frustrating, Ray, is like, aren't the top 2 guys Tyreek Hill and Christian McCaffrey? Aren't they the MVP? And they can't win it because I don't know when this was determined or decided, but the MVP is a quarterback, and the offensive player of the year is the actual MVP. At least as I see it. I hear offensive player of the year, and that's like a guy who just put up Studley numbers, like out of this world numbers, kind of like Cooper Kupp did a few years ago. But this ignorance of MVPs, it's got to be a quarterback and does it matter? Probably not. But Ray, it's really frustrating to me because when I think MVP, it is Tyreek Hill. It is Christian McCaffrey. It's not, these quarterbacks are good. They're fine, but they're not MVPs. It's just like, just because they have the football in their hands on every play doesn't mean we have to give them the MVP vote that everybody seems married to.
Yeah, and not that one game tells the story, but as we discussed, look at last night. What happened with Tyreek Hill going down? The offense kind of, right? And I agree with you. I get it. You can make the case that the quarterback position is the most important single position in all North American sports. You can absolutely make that case. At the same time, I know a lot of smart people, Jeff Mans being one of them, who said the exact same thing you did, Kyle, that Tyreek Hill and CMC are the real MVPs here. And he don't go off, and he went on a whole thing, as Jeff can do. Don't give me that Brock Purdy's the NFL MVP. CMC is the MVP of that team. So clearly, if he's the MVP of the team, Brock Purdy's not in the MVP chase. I agree with you. I think a lot of people look at it that way, Kyle. The MVP goes to the quarterback. The offensive player of the year is really the guy that everyone should be looking at. And it is a weird scenario that, we have sprinklings of defensive players. You hear Micah Parsons or TJ Watt. Like, you hear that. But they're not really considered either. It's half the football game. And you don't ever hear the defensive side mentioned at all. So it is kind of sad that it's become an MVP award, like you said. Well,
and the latest hero is Lamar Jackson. Why is that? Well, it's because they had a huge win against the Rams. Again, this follows whatever happened on Sunday. That's how people, I'm constantly entertained by the latest odds. Well, I could guess those odds purely based off what happened on Sunday, because people are just guessing and they don't really think. They just see what happens. So Lamar Jackson's the leader, and Ray's been good, but I'm sorry. In let's see here, last 6 games, in 3 of those games, he hasn't even gotten to 190 yards passing. In those 6 games, he has thrown 8 touchdowns in 6 games. His completion percentage, 56, 56, 62, 56, 80, and 66. He's good, but he's not great. Christian McCaffrey's great. Tyreek Hill's great. Lamar Jackson's a good quarterback this year, and yet he's the leader now to win the MVP. Again, it's personal preference, and it doesn't really matter again, but it's one of those things, the way we appreciate the game, or that the public seems to appreciate, is very distant from how I seem to appreciate the game.
Niners beat the Eagles, and it was Brock Purdy, right? It's exactly what you're talking about. So, we go through this a lot where we determine who the MVP is or isn't. And then like you said, it changes every week. And, that's kind of the nature of the game. It's a short season. There's only 17 games played and all that, but it's kind of like you said, it's media driven. It really is media driven. And the storylines kind of write themselves.
Which leads us to New York, the media capital of the world. And Ray, as Sal says in our chat room, if you're going to give the MVP to a quarterback, give it to Danny DeVito. Danny DeVito for MVP. I will say he was a punchline for me 5-6 weeks ago. There was a moment, I think it was you and I on this show, Ray, where I said, I never want to say this kid's name again. Well, he has shoved it in my face. Because not only, Ray, is he now the starting quarterback week in, week out, but he's now pulled off 3 straight victories. He just knocked off the playoff team. Now, last night, the most impressive part with DeVito last night, Ray, was his scrambling ability. I don't think anything else was all that impressive. They got the win. That last drive was great. He did make some big plays, but I was more impressed by Wan'Dale Robinson doing something. I mean, Robinson had, you could say, 3 big catches and another huge run. In that game, Wan'Dale Robinson had 4 plays that were huge to the bottom line. But again, QBs get the credit, so Tommy DeVito is getting the credit here today.
Well, Tyrod Taylor's coming back from the issue, right, health-wise, and
can you start Tyrod Taylor at this point, Ray?
That's the thing. That's what I was going to say. I keep reading. Well, Tyrod Taylor's going to take back over the job. Why? Taylor is a career backup, and he's perfectly adequate at that. Okay, but why not let DeVito play and just check it out? I mean, it's DeVito's going to be your backup to Daniel Jones, right? Get him some playing time. Daniel Jones is not exactly Mr. Health, right? It makes no sense to me at all that Taylor's even in the conversation for anybody, even if DeVito's not doing great things. To your point, he's been okay. He's been better than a lot of people thought, and they're winning football games.
If nothing else, Ray, they found their backup to Daniel Jones next season. Jones should be back. They're paying him gobs. He's a starting quarterback. The DeVito thing's fun, but it's New York. If this were happening in Arizona, nobody's really losing their minds.
Right.
I will remind everybody, it was just a month ago maybe less, that people were losing their minds about Joshua Dobbs. Like, oh my God, this was incredible. And a month later, he goes to Vegas and he can't get his team to get a single point. He gets benched in the fourth quarter, 10 completions for 60 yards. These things I'm saying, Ray, with Dobbs, Ray, I wouldn't be shocked at all if Tommy DeVito runs into these issues.
Right.
So it's fun. It's great. That's all cool. Wan'Dale Robinson, I guess, is the story here. Because, Ray, these are big numbers at, 79 yards receiving on 6 catches. Couple of carries for 36 yards. Again, big numbers. He's another Giant. Like, literally, I think we've gone through 5 different guys this year, Ray, of every week. Oh, this is the Giant to have. This is the Giant to have. I'm not going to recommend Wan'Dale Robinson to anybody. I'm not. And maybe it's lazy analysis, Ray, but I don't care. Like, this offense, the way it's built, sorry, Tommy DeVito. Sorry, Brian Dable, all you guys, but I'm not buying any of your receivers. None of them have consistency. We've gone through Jalen Hyatt this year. Every week, Sterling Shepard, we've gone through for a half decade. It just can't happen in this offense with these collective of receivers. They have like 5-6 guys who are all the same right now.
Yeah, I'll say it this way. I'm in a 14-team league, the FSGA league. I'm in the playoffs. I was looking at the waiver wire this morning. I have A.T. Perry, he's the last guy on my bench. I'm going to make a change this week. And Wan'Dale Robinson is sitting on the waiver wire, and it's like $1. Like, because it's a 14-team league. We start 3 receivers. It's a PPR set. But you can't trust that. You can't trust the offense is not prolific through the air. You've got Slayton, Robinson, Hyatt, Hodgins, Shepard, Campbell if he's healthy. You can't. Plus, everyone on this team is basically a slot receiver, and they're all small. And that limits you. I mean, Robinson's ability to do what he did last night, we've seen it happen on occasions, but he's normally a 4-catch, 39-yard guy or something, 3-catch, 40-yard. Like, there's just not – this offense is not explosive enough. His role is not explosive enough. The volume isn't exciting, and he certainly is not a touchdown threat. So very tepid interest, but it was a nice game last night.
Saquon Barkley, a couple of touchdowns. He was solid. Saquon, I give him some credit. He could have just bagged it this year at a couple of points. He's had injuries. He's obviously upset with the contract. He'll be a free agent again. The team is not all that exciting. Again, they're in the playoff race, but not really. Although Saquon does deny that. What did he say? I think he dropped an MFer last week when asked if they were still in the playoff race. And they are, I guess, at this point. On the Green Bay side, and Red come ticks, he nailed it. No sacks last night against Tommy DeVito. I think the Giants came into this game with the highest sack percentage allowed in all of football. So this should be a team that you do get some sacks against. Pretty sloppy for Green Bay. Although I will say, Ray, I'm not surprised by it. Like, again, Tennessee, that was kind of shocking. Green Bay, they're coming in with the hype, and Jordan Love seems to have figured it out. And I don't think he was bad last night. It was a so-so effort. You're not always just going to be up, and it never stops. A couple mistakes. There's fumbles here, sacks, a muffed punt. It was not a good game for Green Bay, but people do need to understand that's still a very young team led by a young quarterback. So I don't look at them and say, oh gosh, they're a total paper tiger. Again, it's just kind of the trials and tribulations you go through with the youth that they do have on that team.
Yeah, and they have extreme youth at the wide receiver position. They've got not necessarily a young quarterback, but a rather inexperienced quarterback, even though he's got the time in the NFL because he was behind Rodgers. So, if someone said at the start of the season, this team would be 6-7, Jordan Love would be quarterback 18 heading into the fantasy playoffs. Yeah, okay. Right. Like, I don't think that would stand out appreciably. It's disappointing because there are some people out there in the fantasy space and otherwise that, we joked about it on Thanksgiving. It was, Jordan Love for MVP. Like, the announcers thought he was the greatest thing they've ever seen. Like, it was amazing. And some people take those things too far, as you suggested. This is still a team that's growing and finding their pace and their way. And the loss last night to the Giants is terrible for them, playoff aspirations and all that. And, we had Watson down. We had, Jaden Reed score a touchdown, but it was on the ground. I don't know how, and this is another one of those things. How do you get 10 targets and you produce 27 yards? Like, it's so bad.
Catches, 27
yards.
Yeah.
I mean, we were talking yesterday about Zay Jones. At least Zay Jones only had like 4 catches, right? He didn't have 8 catches. They really miss Watson and that ability to stretch the field. And I think Romeo Doubs is the most frustrating piece here because all these other guys have their moments, and Dobbs had a couple, but they were earlier in the season. I don't understand why Dobbs is the guy that just kind of gets 4 catches every week. Why is it Heath or Toure or all these? Why is it not Dobbs when he's the Mr. Consistent guy that's out there every week?
With Love, you mentioned the fantasy playoffs starting, and last night, for people who were, settling, I don't want to say settling, but maybe they've drifted towards Love as their starting QB. Last night's probably going to change their confidence in him over the next 3 weeks. Now, the next 3 opponents, Ray, are Tampa, Carolina, and Minnesota. Now, none of those teams are what you would term good teams. Now, 2 of them are involved in the playoff race, Minnesota and Tampa, but they're not very good. Are you confident in Love in those matchups? Like, do you feel good saying Love against Tampa, Carolina, and Minnesota? They should win at least 2 of those 3, but is he at that level to where you say, because of the matchup, Jordan Love is into my top 12 amongst QBs? I don't know if I'm there with Love. It's a little bit back and forth with him. He looked really good. Mm-hmm. And so you want to give him credit for what he did against, the Chargers, the Lions, the Chiefs, all these games. But then last night, it was back to kind of just being the ho-hum Jordan Love.
I think if you're looking for an overarching answer, I'd say he's quarterback 11 to 18, right? He's in that zone. And so it really depends what else you've got at the position. I wouldn't get overly excited and say he's a top 10 guy. I wouldn't drop him down to 20. The quarterback position, and we'll talk about it with Herbert, it never stops in 2023. Mm-hmm. And there's so many backups and so many spotty quarterback play and so much spotty offensive play that when you have a quarterback like Love, who's in a pretty stable offense, who's throwing the ball 35 times a week, it's tough to run away from that. It would be really helpful for the Packers if they could ever get healthy. Again, Watson was out last night. Aaron Jones missed another game. And though Aaron Jones hasn't done anything, I think he's very important to the offense because A.J. Dillon is a bag of rocks. He doesn't do anything, So Love is someone it depends. If I'm in a 10-team league, I don't want to start Jordan Love. If I'm in a 14-team league, it's probably okay.
What's crazy about Love, Ray, and this may surprise people, he is tied for 5th in the NFL in touchdown passes. He's got as many touchdown throws as Patrick Mahomes. He also has as many interceptions as Patrick Mahomes. They both have 11, which is a very high number for both guys. Now, Mahomes has him beat by 300 yards passing, but Mahomes has thrown 40 more passes. Honestly, Ray, it's kind of been a wash between Jordan Love and Mahomes. And as we go into the playoffs, I don't think anybody is disputing, not me, not you, nobody, that Patrick Mahomes is still an every week starter. Jordan Love's numbers are almost identical to Mahomes, yet here I am sitting here and saying, I'm not sure on Jordan Love. It's like, when does a guy convince you that he is in that spot? And according to the stats, Love is in that spot this season as a QB1.
For the last 5 games, Love has thrown at least 36 passes. For the last 5 games, he has at least 2 touchdown passes. Okay, so if you look at the last month, he's better than Patrick Mahomes too. So and this is a debate that Jeff Manns was having on his Elite Sports Show, SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, Monday through Friday from 3 to 5. I'm on Wednesdays with Jeff. There was a debate he was having yesterday. It's like, at what point do we say, because we all say this, he's Patrick Mahomes, it's Andy Reid. Okay. And you may not have him ranked 1 or 2 or 3, but what's the lowest he's ever been ranked this week? 6? Like, you just don't, right? Like, you just don't. But the numbers and the eyeball test, it's like, so how aggressive would you be if you had those 2 guys, hypothetically, Kyle?
Oh, it's Mahomes every week. So if I had Mahomes and Love as my QB combo, I am still going Mahomes every single week, barring 6 inches of snow and a wind of 25 miles an hour, But all things being equal, even against tough defenses, Ray. If I got Mahomes against the Ravens or whatever it is, the Cowboys, still going Mahomes over Love there. It's like I'm not even thinking twice. Yet again, the numbers say I should think twice with those 2.
And that's a really hard thing as an analyst on our side, trying to help the people that are listening and watching, because I'm in the same boat as you. It's like, I have that. If I had that decision, then I don't. But if I had that decision, it's not a decision. I'm going Patrick Mahomes. And, it's tough because the numbers, again, we're talking about, they're pretty even lately. They're trending. But there's a difference in the play calling. There's a difference in who they are. There's a difference in their experience. All these differences to me still add up to starting Patrick Mahomes. And that's difficult for some people. And we get smashed as analysts for that sometimes because it's like, oh, you're just saying play your studs. I'm like, well, kinda. But let's also remember that, 3 months ago, Patrick Mahomes was being considered one of the 5 greatest quarterbacks who ever lived, right? And we've forgotten that really quickly with a couple weeks of struggles with the Chiefs.
Well, and Chaka in the chat room says, I'd rather go a Love or a Browning over Russell Wilson. I don't know about Browning. I mean, you got to understand what he did last week were 2 screen passes that went for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Right.
And then you get a rushing touchdown. You should never count on rushing touchdowns with Jake Browning. Okay, you shouldn't. And B, you shouldn't count on 2 screen passes going for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. These are not things that are conducive to scoring. So I'm not there with Browning. Okay, that's me. Other people may be there. Love versus Wilson, absolutely, Ray. And they've been very similar this year. Love's a bit better, but this idea, I'm not saying Love can't start or that he isn't a QB1 in certain situations against guys like Russell Wilson. Now, another one to me, Ray, is like Jared Goff, where Jared Goff was really good for 8-9 weeks, but has been very quiet the last 3-4 games or so. That becomes a difficult one in the postseason. Love is at least asking the question for a lot of matchups. Like if I've got Hurts, if I've got Jackson, if I've got Allen, if I've got Mahomes, no question. But now Love is in that next tier, probably even Dak. Dak, I would say he's so hot right now. He would be ahead of Love in every single week matchup for me. But after that, Ray, then it's pretty cloudy at the QB position.
Lamar Jackson?
Love, well, I think, if I didn't say Jackson, I should have said Jackson. But after those 5 or 6 guys, Ray, Love's in that next tier where every week you can start him over any of those other quarterbacks.
Yeah, the rankings come out like at 3 a.m. It was actually 3:30 a.m. over at Fantasygurucom. Jeff watches the Monday Night Football games and spends hours finalizing all the rankings for the week. And so the early rankings are this for the quarterback position. Again, these are early rankings. They'll be adjusted throughout the week based upon what we hear. Russell Wilson's 11. Jordan Love is 12. Jake Browning is 13. And Jared Goff is 14. So Kyle wasn't even looking at him. And there we go. We had the question.
Who are the 2 names ahead of Russell Wilson? You said he was 11.
He was 11. Right now, Justin Fields. And for the moment, CJ Stroud.
Yeah, and I think Stroud's kind of doubtful. I would say if you've got Stroud, probably be planning for another move. I think, those guys who are 13, 14 this week, they could be 7, 8 next week, depending on the matchups and how things fall. So again, after you get outside that top 5, top 6, Jordan Love's in that group, and it comes down to matchups. It comes down to who's healthy. It comes down to the weather in December. Those things can make a difference. One last thing on Monday Night Football, Greg, one of our regulars. We love having Greg in here every day. Tucker Kraft, I think it was 4 catches, 64 yards, actually led the Packers in receiving yardage on Monday night. Kraft or Schultz or Taysom Hill. If the question is reliable, I don't see it with Tucker Kraft. Sorry, I'm not there. When's Musgrave? Is he out for?
Yeah, he's on the IR, right?
IR, so he's got maybe a week or 2 left on that IR, I think it is. And then we'll have to see if he's going to be back. Let's say Kraft is starting the rest of the season.
Christmas Eve, he's eligible, Kyle.
Yeah, let's say Kraft's just, boom, the starter. I'd still rather have Taysom Hill. And when has Kyle Elfrink ever said that? Ray, Taysom Hill, when he's out there, they use him. They have used him more this year than ever before. If I can use him as a tight end in my fantasy league, I'm taking him every time against Tucker Kraft.
Yeah, reliable is not a word I would use for Kraft. I think that if these 3 guys are on the football field, he's a distant third. Schultz and Hill are ahead of him. Now, are Schultz and Hill going to play? I don't know. So that's, if you have both Hill and Schultz, you're in a tough spot this week because both those guys obviously didn't play last week, and it's too early this week to know. And I don't want to tell you to carry 3 tight ends. So this question's come up multiple times in Discord over at fantasyguru.com, Kyle. What do you do? Because you can't, are you going to wait?
I don't do bidding on Tucker Kraft.
Right.
I'm not in that pool. If people are bidding on Tucker Kraft, I think there are going to be other options equal to him that I can get later in the week for $1 or free in effect.
Okay.
I would chance it with Hill being back this week or Schultz being back this week. I would chance it. It may blow up in my face come Thursday, Friday. Maybe I'm looking for a free tight end pickup. It can happen, folks. I mean, you can get, Chigakonkwo had a pretty decent game last night. Nothing special, but that's all you really need is 4 catches and 40 yards, and you call that a win. So to me, I'm sitting with what I have of Hill or Schultz. I'm not making a bid on Kraft, and I'll get more information. I'll cross my fingers one of them is back for week 15. And if not, I'm making a move on Friday to get a Kate Otten, the random touchdown catch in the end zone, or the guy in Cincinnati, who's been a little more involved. I think it's not worth it too early in the week be bidding up money to get a guy like Tucker Kraft.
And remember too, Christian Watson was out, right? Aaron Jones was out. Jordan Love threw 39 passes with those 2 guys out, and Kraft saw 4 targets.
Yeah.
So
Great point.
It's just not, and this is something we've bemoaned the Packers all season long. Everyone gets targets. Like Jordan Love throws the ball to everyone, which is theoretically good. It's terrible for fantasy, right? Because everyone's getting 4 targets a week. So I agree. Like I said, Tucker Kraft is a distant third to those other 2 guys. We'll just have to wait and see if they play this week.
Appreciate the question, Greg. Keep them coming if you're following us live here on X or Facebook or YouTube, wherever you're at. Let's see. Looking ahead to the waiver wire, because it's kind of a good jumping off point, Tucker Kraft, and talking about that. For many people, waiver wire is upon us. Money is probably short. So understand with bidding, you got to kind of play the strategy of who has money, who does not. Who do you actually need versus, who is just a luxury item. I think at quarterback, Ray, there are probably many people entering the playoffs this week. You could have made the playoffs even with Justin Herbert. You could have. You certainly could make the playoffs with C.J. Stroud. And now both of those guys, Ray, are a pair of starting quarterbacks, probably guys that were starting every week for some playoff teams, and now you're in scramble mode.
Right.
Herbert's out. I think Stroud's a good bet to be out. So, Ray, the waiver wire is pretty important tonight. And as you look at things, there are a lot of the regulars. I mean, Aiden O'Connell's probably been sitting on the waiver wire all season. And
leave him there.
Tommy DeVito and Zach Wilson. But maybe Joe Flacco's been added to the pool. Maybe people are interested in Desmond Ridder after 350 yards last week. Certainly Jake Browning, if he wasn't picked up last week, he's now a heavy sought-after item this week. There are options. The problem is kind of digging through. And before we get to names, because this is an important one for teams that are still alive, Ray, should you only care about this week's matchup?
Great question.
And I kind of feel with these guys, I kind of only care about this week's matchup. That's me. It makes it a lot easier to kind of compartmentalize who to go after. That to me, I know people love looking at the 3 weeks of the fantasy schedule and, he's got the best. And you'll see those columns everywhere. We have them at Fantasy Guru. I'm not saying they're worthless, but I think with quarterbacks of this level, I'm kind of looking at the week 15 matchup more than anything.
Yeah, and it's a great question, and it's the right question because, again, yesterday in Discord over at fantasyguru.com, people were already asking, who do I pick up? Who's got the best playoff? And I'm like, well, I like this guy's 15. I hate his 16 and 17. I like his 15 and 16. His 17 is horrible. And so I don't want to tell someone that if they lost Herbert or they're worried about Stroud, that we're going to grab a guy this week and we'll worry about it next week. I don't want to tell someone that, but unfortunately, some of these guys we might have to end up doing that with, Kyle.
Desmond Ridder, I don't have any interest in.
Zero.
I'm sorry. And he's playing Carolina, and people are going to say, wow, that's a really good matchup. Carolina's not.
Yeah.
He could be benched by the third quarter. That's a guy who could pull the Josh Dobbs. That could happen. Browning, I like Browning. The matchup's good. Nick Mullins, if he gets a start, I wouldn't be very interested in that. It's on the road at Cincinnati. So right now we're sitting with a guy like Browning in the lead. Flacco is home against the Bears. He's probably cheaper than Jake Browning, just slightly. And Ray, I think his odds of success are about equal this week, Flacco versus Browning.
Well, I think that, and these are the 2 guys that people were focused on yesterday as we're focusing on here. And you look at, the matchup this week for Browning. I agree with you. It's a solid matchup. You look at the next 2 weeks, it's not good. It's at Pittsburgh. It's at Kansas City. Ugh. That's not good. I don't want to start an unproven quarterback in those scenarios. Then you look at, Flacco, and this week is good, and next week against Houston's fine, and then it's the Jets in week 17, and it's yikes. So I think Browning's the pickup. I'd have him at number 1. I'd worry about I unfortunately have to worry about the next move next week. If I have a CJ Stroud, maybe he's back. Again, he could play this week. If it's a Herbert thing, you're just in a tough spot because they're just difficult matchups for Browning after week 15.
Zach Wilson, DeVito, and Levis. I mean, all those guys are probably available, is my guess. I'm not going to put them in the Flacco Browning class, but Ray, they all deserve like a $1.
Sure.
And the way bidding works in most leagues is, okay, if you don't get Browning or Flacco, you're probably going to get your third pick with the way bidding works. It'd be surprising to me that you wouldn't, because I don't think we have 5-6 teams all going after quarterbacks this week. I'd be surprised if that were the case. Right. So what I would do, and this is early in the week, and if I really had this issue, I'd really dig in the numbers. I'd really break down the matchups. But Ray, if I put let's say I've got $11 left. Maybe I'm throwing 7 apiece on Browning and Flacco. And if I don't get them, I'm doing $1 apiece on Wilson, DeVito, and Levis. And I think it's up to everybody how they want to rank those guys. Maybe you dig into the week 16 matchup, the week 17. But I think all those guys probably deserve at least a $1. Hey, I got to have something at quarterback. Again, we're talking to the Stroud and Herbert owner, most especially here. Zach Wilson, I'm not sold on last week. He goes to Miami. I don't think Zach Wilson can do what Will Levis did last night. So understand, I'm not really fired up about Wilson. With DeVito at New Orleans does not have this reputation of being a great pass defense, but I still think they have this streak of not having given up 275 yards passing in like 40 games. It's like our 30 game. It's a really wild number. New Orleans doesn't give up passing yards, and this is on the road in the Dome. I don't really like that matchup. The Levis matchup, Ray, is at home against Houston. Mm-hmm. Zach Wilson just beat up on Houston. Levis might be the tops of those 3 mediocre options at quarterback.
I agree with you. Now, the problem with that is, and let's remember, in most leagues, 6 teams are still playing? So as Kyle's talking about, we shouldn't have a frenzy of bidding on quarterbacks because teams should have. But there is a chance, if you're in a league where everyone's down to the DeVitos of the world, that Levis, because of what happened last night on national TV, goes for more. But I would, of the names we're talking about with the matchup in week 15, I think he is the third option behind Browning and Flacco. So I'd be willing to, and again, like you said, it matters how much money you have to spend, what your league looks like, how you can pick guys up. But tons of strategy.
It's tons of specific strategy where it's hard to give overarching, like this is the way to go. Like, so much is dependent on, like you said, your budget, where you stand, your competition, all of that stuff. It's
I don't want to end up starting Aiden O'Connell or Easton Stick. Like, I don't want to end up in that zone. What a name, too, but I don't want to end up there. So you got to do what you need to do to not have to fall down to that level.
Yeah, and I think for those needing a QB, again, Herbert and Stroud, it's important. You got to have somebody. You got to get those big points. Running backs kind of open too this week, Ray. Jerick McKinnon may be sitting around and people see the touchdown last week. Sounds like Zamir White of Vegas. Kyle, Oakland doesn't have a team. Of Vegas could be starting come Thursday night. Josh Jacobs, for what it's worth, got a Monday DNP. Raiders are playing the Chargers on Thursday. We may see Chandler and Chase Brown sitting out there. So again, Ray, there may be options available, but those are 4 names, especially Zamir White. I feel like he's available in a variety. I mean, a vast majority of leagues out there.
Yeah, he is. And he is someone that we've talked about previously, who I've taught in, I think it was the listener league on RT Sports. I had Zamir White. We had 18 spots on our roster. I had Zamir White as my last guy the whole season. Like, I just said, if the way they're going to run this offense, the way the backfield looks, Zamir White's getting 15 touches if Jacobs goes down. Maybe we end up there. Now, the obvious problem with that is that White is likely to be expensive because other people are going to see the same thing. On the short week, I don't think there's a great chance of Jacobs playing. So I think we can get some run with White. But we have seen Jacobs be so plotting for the majority of the season because of the offense and all these things. Like, how much can we get from Zamir White? A lot of people need 14 points, and maybe he can pull that off and you'll be happy with it. But he is a priority add, in my opinion, but it's also scary / unnerving to think I'm starting the fantasy playoffs and he's one of my 2 running backs or even my flex option.
Yeah, he's going to a team that had 0 points last week.
Yeah.
With Jacobs, with Devontae Adams, with Jacoby Myers, 0 points. So the offense is is certainly lacking. Waiver wire is pretty wild, I think. And again, 12, 14, 16 team leagues. This kind of changes who's available, who's not. We all have different needs. I would recommend don't get too cute. Like, there are some people out there, Ray, who it's the playoffs, and maybe they even have a bye this week, and they're still playing the game of, I'm going to keep Zamir White away from people. I'm going to keep Jake Browning away from, even though they have no need.
Mm-hmm.
I would recommend overall against that, just because you may have no needs now, but depending on what happens, you may have needs to spend that money in week 16 and 17. And I'd hate to have spent money on Zamir White, even when I'm not using him this week. And then come week 16, all of a sudden I need that money back because I've got injuries. So, like, to me, a lot of times people want to get cute with the blocking, keeping players away. I'd rather worry about my team. If I don't have needs, hold on to that money. It's going to be valuable to you, I think, in week 15 or week 16 and week 17 if you're still alive there.
Like a lot of the stuff we talked about today, I think it is dependent upon your format. In the Dynasty League I'm part of, I'm bidding on Easton Stick and Nick Mullins heavily. Not because I have any desire to play them. They're not going to see because I'm trying to keep them away from someone. I'm in the fantasy playoffs, and it's a Dynasty League. That's different, right? Than a 10-team league or even a 12-team redraft league. If you're in a super flex or 2-quarterback league, so I think it does depend. I think in general, your advice, you're in a traditional 12-team league that, has one quarterback and all. I think that advice in general is solid, but I don't, you also look at your opponents. Like we talked about earlier, if your opponents have Hurts and Mahomes and Allen, and no one needs a quarterback, what difference does it make? If your opponents or the remaining people in the pool are going with the Ritters and the Levises of the world, then you act differently.
Good luck to everybody on the waiver wire tonight. And again, you can always hit up Ray at the Ray Flowers if you've got some questions. Discord as well, always open. So make use of that option. Quick run through of injuries. Justin Herbert, we told you about that yesterday. We had the news, fractured finger. He's out for week 15. Surgery is probably going to happen, and they will have a better read on Herbert once that surgery takes place. Again, I would consider it unlikely that we see Justin Herbert again this year. Josh Palmer had a full practice yesterday, so we could see Josh Palmer back on the field for Thursday. Again, desperation heat.
I added Josh Palmer thinking Justin Herbert and Palmer. Now I get Easton Stick.
Sure. Easton Stick and Palmer.
Yeah.
Justin Jefferson is considered day-to-day, so that'll be a situation to follow through the week. Also through the week, the Vikings are not naming their starting quarterback yet. Hopefully by Thursday or so, we'll have that decision. Kenny Pickett is out this week. Mitch Trubisky is in. That may be another guy in the Levis, DeVito, Wilson range. I don't know. Is he in that range, Ray, or is he behind those guys even? Trubisky.
Just a little behind. Oh, just a little. I mean, again, we don't know when Pickett's going to be back. It certainly seems like they'll go to Pickett if he's able to play. Trubisky was disappointing last week, so just behind him.
And if you're looking for a place kicker, Kaimi Fairburn is due back this week for Houston. I think they're like 6th in field goals this year. They're kind of an offense that plays that way. Of course, they may have Davis Mills as their quarterback because C.J. Stroud is indeed in concussion protocol. History suggests that he's probably out this week when you're in the protocol. Of course, there's a playoff spot on the line, and teams usually look the other way when there's a playoff spot on the other line. So we'll have to wait and see with Stroud. But the smart move is to pick up somebody or to have somebody in reserve of C.J. Stroud for the weekend. Week 14 in the books, but fear not, week 15 just around the corner. Tomorrow on the show, Rich Mileto is going to join us to talk some NFL. Rich has kind of the streaming column every week, so we'll kind of get his take on these quarterbacks. Also buy, sell, hold. We'll talk some general football coming up with Rich on tomorrow's show. I want to close things down today with a little baseball. We did not get a chance to talk about this on Monday's edition of FSD because we're crazy football, Monday night doubleheader, all that stuff. But right over the weekend, we did get Shohei Ohtani with this monstrous, eye-popping deal, joining the Dodgers, 10 years, $700 million. It's hard to believe this, but maybe even more eye-popping than the overall money that he got is the way this contract is now structured, where over the 10 years of the contract, he will actually get paid $20 million for 10 years. And then the next 10 years after that, Ray, whether he's with the Dodgers or not, he could be still playing baseball. But over those next 10 years, right, he will bring in 680 million, 68 million a year. And people forget, Ray, he may still be playing baseball. So you wonder if a guy's already got 68 million coming in 10 years from now, maybe he signs for $1 million. And I don't know if he's going to be great by then, but the setup of this deal is pretty wild. And as you noted early on, it's almost ridiculous this kind of deal is even allowed in baseball, isn't it?
Yeah, and I threw it up there just so people can look at it on the screen. Competitive balance tax. Baseball fakes this. They don't have a salary cap. By the way, let me start what I said at the beginning. Kudos to Ohtani for doing this. Now, on the other side of things, the competitive balance tax says if you hit a certain threshold, you start having to pay tax on your salaries. So what the Dodgers have done is they've added salary that doesn't show up on the book. So the $70 million he's actually scheduled to get only comes out to $46 million according to the calculations the league has. Mm-hmm. So in essence, the Dodgers could go out and sign another player for $24 million and have the same amount of value according to the tax rules as they actually in the real world are paying Ohtani. Now, I've heard people say, well, Ray, come on, they're paying him in the future. Okay, this is not a 20-year contract. This is a 10-year contract. He might be getting paid out over 20 years, but it's a 10-year contract. Oddly enough, there is I called it a loophole, and people push back on me on social media at the Ray Flowers. It's not, I guess, a loophole if it's in the CBA, but there is a rule in the CBA that Jeff Passan pointed out that this is totally legal, which is why the contract was upheld by Major League Baseball. In essence, we have a tax if you spend too much money in baseball that can be completely avoided if you sign a player to this level of a contract. And this is scary bad for baseball. And it has nothing to do with the Dodgers, has nothing to do with Ohtani. This is scary bad for baseball because whichever team can convince the most players to sign deferred contracts can now build a dream team. Yeah. Because there is this way that you can get around paying the taxes by deferring the money. And again, Kyle, I don't understand. You have a salary cap or you don't. I don't understand. In basketball, you can pay people $700 trillion to keep your own free agents. I get all this stuff. You either have a cap or you don't. And I can't believe that in the CBA, there's a rule that says you can give a contract like this and avoid paying taxes on it as a team and have this extra money to spend. I can't believe that's written into the contract, one. And two, I can't believe we haven't heard more about this. Like, why was no one talking about this?
It's and I think it's player specific with this because it's wild, Ray, to think you're going to defer $680 million and get zero interest on it. Mm-hmm. Like no interest. This is going to be 680, which 10 years from now, and I am not the Federal Reserve Bank, but 10 years from now, 680 is not going to be 680. Still going to be an ass load of money, okay? I get this. But in effect, he's given up money by agreeing to this. And again, that's why it's player specific. He wanted to be in LA, and he wants to win. So he created this deal, and made this offer. I doubt, Ray, he went, if negotiations were going on with the Yankees or the Angels or the Blue Jays, whomever, I bet this was not offered to them, that he would be willing to do this. I think he wanted to be in LA and he wanted to make it happen. He also wanted to continue to make them competitive. Now, I'm glad you said the point that needs to be known here. You're right. The 70 million does not count against the competitive balance tax, the salary cap, but it is still 46 million.
Right.
It's a big chunk of change. Mm-hmm. So it's not like they're only getting 2 million counted against them versus the 70. You're right. They're saving about $24 million. It allows them to maybe get Marcus Stroman or, some other pitcher out there. Blake Snell. I guess Blake Snell.
Remember too, though, Ohtani is himself 2 players when he's healthy. So they're getting 3 players for the price of 1.
Do you think that's a given? I don't. I know he wants to do it and all that, but I just wonder if that's a given. He'll probably come back. But, Ray, this will now be 2 Tommy John surgeries for him. Now, he's broken every barrier we've put in place in front of him. And it's not impossible to be a great good pitcher after 2 TJSs, but it's difficult. All in all, Ray, you're right. It's a loophole. I think it is. Nobody else is doing this. And you're right. The Dodgers now have more money to go out and spend. And, does the tax affect the Dodgers? They got under the tax last year, Ray, because they planned to do this kind of thing. So, and the reason the tax is important is it provides for more competition. The money, the tax, goes to the other team.
So it should matter to everyone in baseball, whether it matters to the Dodgers or not, to your point.
Yeah. And Ray, I don't know if Pittsburgh can get a contract like this. You know, who's going to Pittsburgh? It's very, the Yankees can do this. The Dodgers can do this. Red Sox will probably now try to do this. The Cubs, you know, the big markets are going to try to do this. I don't know if it'll work. I think there is, of all the teams in baseball, maybe a special attraction to LA.
Right.
You have Betts in store. You have Freeman in store. They're constantly winning. Like that at this juncture, Ray, is the jewel franchise in baseball. Even though they only have one title in the last 40 years, almost 35 years, I guess. But they're the crown jewel. The Yankees are not the crown jewel. Like Ray, I wonder, would Ohtani give this kind of deal to the Yankees? I would bargain he would not give this kind of deal. He wanted to stay in LA, and that's why I don't fear these contracts happening everywhere, because I think it was very specific to this unicorn talent who absolutely wanted to make it happen in a certain franchise. Certain market.
I'm not saying this is going to happen, like we're going to start getting middle relievers doing this. I'm not saying that. But just for an example, hypothetically, Blake Snell. Let's say Toronto says, here's $250 million, Blake Snell. And the Dodgers say, whoa, we'll give you $350 million. We're only going to give you $250 now. We're going to defer 100 of it because they have the money to spend.
Yeah.
You know, what if you're Blake Snell, what do? Turn $100 million down? Of course not. Now, if baseball considers the contracts the same, which it would, here we go, the Dodgers. And it's not about the, except people, it's not about the Dodgers. It's about baseball. Whatever team can convince players to do this gets a massive advantage. Massive advantage. And this will cause an even greater disparity between the haves and the have-nots, which again is why I'm stunned to see that this is in the CBA, that this is
well, I wonder if that will be an argument or a point. Like I said, Ray, it's not the whole, it's in effect, they're getting, what is it, a 30% discount against the salary cap. Right. And I'm guessing that's got to be close to the max you could possibly get. I guess if somebody signs a $100 million contract, it drops to 60, you know.
Right.
So we're talking about it's big. I get your point. Totally get your point. I think it's mostly a one-off. I don't know. Maybe you're right. Maybe it'll be this way. There's like 5-6 teams that can do this.
Well, and I haven't seen this, and I know I've read a lot. I tried to figure this out. Maybe you saw it. So the Dodgers have to pay him in the future. He's not getting paid now, like we're talking about. It's all deferred. It's not being put in an annuity. He's not getting interest. He's just getting paid in years 11 through 20. Does that mean that if the Dodgers sell the team 10 years from now, the new owner has to take on that liability? I think it does, right?
It does, yeah. Absolutely.
And that's a $680 million liability. So, again, that's another thing, like you're talking about. How many teams are willing to do this? Because, you know, we're lopping $700 million off our sale price. Boom, because I got to pay this guy. And where the hell is Ohtani going to be when he's 39 years old? And what does this do to the Dodgers? Because and you said it earlier, you know, $70 million today is totally going to be different than it is 14 years from now. But this is a significant handicap to the Dodgers in the future, because now we're talking about, even though it's not on the books, we're talking about having an extra $70 or $68 million on our payroll.
We'll add, don't feel bad for Ohtani taking $2 million in LA, which, I mean, $2 million in LA is like $500,000 elsewhere. Outside of California, how about that? Yeah. We're told he makes about $50 million per year in endorsements, and my guess is, Ray, that number will only grow
probably
with the move up the freeway to the Dodgers. So he'll be fine.
and this is brought up a lot yesterday too. Since he's not getting the money now, if 11 years from now he moves to Florida or some other state, he doesn't have to pay California taxes because he's not actually earning the money today. So it's wherever he ends up living where he gets the money.
Is that I wondered about that, and I didn't investigate. Are we certain that's true? Because I didn't know, Ray, but I thought about that. Like, if he moves to Florida, is that considered income for him in Florida, or is the money considered earned now? Because the contract's 10 years. We're just paying you at a later date. We're paying you for what you do in the 10 years, but we're paying you at a later date. And usually it's taxed where you earn it.
Right.
Again, this is Maybe I can get my dad on this. He's a CPA.
Yeah, you should.
I just don't know, but you may be right on that.
I asked my partner. She's a lawyer. She's not a tax person. She's a lawyer, and she said she believes it's paid out when he gets it. So wherever he lives. And Bob Nightingale wrote an article about it, and that's what Bob Nightingale said, if you believe him, that it will be, because he talked about California's rate being the highest and all that kind of stuff. So that's a way for Ohtani to make back some of the money that he's giving up by not getting interest if he moves out of California by the time he starts getting paid that amount.
Yeah. Who would leave California, though, Ray, right? You're a lifelong Californian.
I am, and I might leave California.
Don't leave, Ray. We need people like you. Like, how many people do you run into that they're like born and bred in California? Is it?
And you have to, for people that don't know my family history and who cares, but my grandparents on my mother's side came to California in the 1920s. They actually met at Cal. They were both students at Cal. So, and then my dad's side of the family was the 1930s. So my family on both sides has been in the Bay Area for almost 100 years.
Yeah.
No one, no California, at least in the Bay Area, can really match that. That's pretty unique. So
you can't leave, because the Chronicle, when you get to about 95, you're going to be the last guy who was actually born in San Francisco in the area that actually lived there their whole life.
I don't know. It's people are leaving. It's expensive, and there's it's beautiful. It's beautiful. I've lived here my whole life, but there are some issues out here in California.
You just got to keep moving to the east, right? Keep going to the east, further away from the Bay, and end up in the farmlands of California. People, we always think LA, San Francisco, but like California is pretty damn rural. Actually, but who knows? That's a discussion for another day. Shohei Ohtani wanted to stay in LA. I think that was very evident. We will be back tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern. I mentioned Rich Mileto. We'll get you the latest on NFL injury reports, all that stuff. Take a look ahead to week 15, kind of run through the games. Remember, we've got 3 games on Saturday. We got the one on Thursday, 3 games coming up on Saturday, the usual amount of action. Well, not the amount, but the usual set of games on Sunday. And then we've got the Monday nighter. Do we have 2 Monday night games next week? What do you think of that, Ray? Are you a fan of the? Rather, we got one next week.
I'd rather have 2 games on Monday than games on Saturday and Friday and all over the map. So it's okay. I don't mind it.
I'm fine with it, but I don't like them at the same time.
That's totally fair.
Yeah, sometimes it's a battle in your own mind of which game. Last night it was, which game am I actually going to watch? Like, I didn't really know what. Now, they both ended up being very good games, but early on it's like, well, which game am I going to devote time to? I chose Dolphins, Titans, and then I kind of flipped back and forth. I didn't have the 2 TV set up last night, so I had to kind of jump around there. But 2's fine, but split them up would be my suggestion. Agreed. Big thanks to everybody in the chat room. Thanks to Ray. Thanks to the NFL. Thanks to Ohtani. You gave us stuff to talk about. We love that. Tomorrow we'll be back 11 a.m. Eastern. This has been Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com.